Hey, welcome back to Two Mics. Colonel Mike here. We just want to let you know we got something special coming up the end of the month. We're going to make an announcement at the end of the month, and we want a lot of you guys to join us. It's probably going to be in the second week of September. And also, don't forget to go to ourgoalguide.com on the two mics.us website. Click ourgoalguide.com and just fill out the form. You heard it on Two Mics. And if you're looking for medals, and you should be, but if you're looking to buy now or later, just fill out the form. Let Ira, our sponsor, Ira the Goal Guy, let him know that you're interested now or maybe later. We're just trying to track and see how many people are tuning in and contacting Ira because he's been with us 3 years. So we want him to know that people are interested, and he's a great sponsor, right? Okay. So that's number two. Number three, thanks again. We went over 400 shows. We're going on our fourth year. Again, big shout out. All of you, everybody in America around the globe, really, thank you, thank you, thank you so much. And if you fill out that form, and Ira tells us there's like 5 or 10 people just filled it out in the last week or two, we'll have a special gift for you. We'll give, he'll just give us the name. He can't tell us your personal information. He'll give us the name, and we will make sure we contact you. We'll get an autograph book by Dr. Mike right to you, delivered UPS or FedEx or USPO. All right. So that'll be a bonus for you guys. All right. Thanks so much for hanging in. And now another great podcast. 3, 2, 1. Hey, welcome back. You're on with Two Mics, Dr. Michael Scheuer and Colonel Mike. And we're happy to report that we made our 400th show. We're going on our fourth year. And we're just going to go right to the guest. The new intro will tell you about Two Mics and everything else. So on the screen is Rainer Zitelmann. Say hi, Rainer. How are you? Live.
Yes, I'm great.
Live,
thank you.
There you go. He's live from Berlin. Great background historian. This is his 27th book we're going to discuss today. And Dr. Mike and I are really, really excited to go over this because his new book is called In Defense of Capitalism. And for you here at home, he just had an article in the Washington Examiner. So, Mike, if you'd like to introduce Mr. Rainer Zitelmann, and then we'll go to it. How's that?
It's okay with me.
Go ahead. You want to talk about Washington Examiner?
Yeah, I thought the piece in the Washington Examiner was very, very excellent, sir. I congratulate you on it.
Thank you.
It kind of makes me nostalgic for a time when conservatism had its head turned or screwed on straight, or at least straighter. And what I was wondering as I read it, is Reagan thought of at all in Germany, or is he thought of fondly, or as the clown they painted him to be?
For me, he's the great hero. And of course, not only what he did for the United States, but what he did for the whole world and what he did Berlin. I remember when he was here in Berlin and said, Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall. But he didn't tear it down. But without the support of Ronald Reagan, Berlin wouldn't be united today. Germany wouldn't be united. And so the bad thing is we have a lot of very left-leaning politicians here in Germany. And there was a proposal to have a statue with Ronald Reagan in Berlin to thank him for this. But they rejected it. We have no statue. And so as a result, the United States Embassy here in Berlin had to put the statue inside their own building because the left people here in Berlin didn't want to see a statue of Ronald Reagan. Isn't it crazy?
It is crazy, but they're learning the price of not following Mr. Reagan's ideas, I think. And I think that probably makes them all the madder that sometime they may have to recant.
Yes, and I think, of course, but a lot of younger people, maybe even in the United States, don't know what happened in the Reagan times. Let me remind you about something. The tax rate when he came to office was 70% in the United States, and he reduced it to 28%. This was the lowest rate since 1925. This is the first thing. So this, the next thing, in this way, he created 17 million new jobs, but real new jobs. Not Joe Biden, sometimes he speaks about that he having allegedly created 13 million jobs, but these are only people who were in the pandemic, who lost their jobs and who came back. No, but with Ronald Reagan, these were 17 million real new jobs. And the last thing, what is important today, when Ronald Reagan arrived at the White House, there was a double-digit inflation rate. And at the end of his first 4 years, it had fallen to the half, to 6%, and then later to 4%. So he fought against inflation. He created a lot of new jobs. He reduced taxes, and he won the Cold War with the Soviet Union. And was, without him, there wouldn't be the breakdown of communism. So for me, he's really the greatest president in the 20th century.
I think that's probably true, sir. I think that's probably true. I also wanted to ask, in the United States, we seem to have, almost immediately after the wall fell, forgotten the difficulties we had in dealing with a communist country, the Soviet Union, and the horror it was as in terms of humanity. And we turned immediately to stroking the forehead of China and creating that disastrous empire that is now standing in front of us. Did the Germans, was there much of a mood in Germany after the wall fell to really embrace China right away?
No, but we had a lot of other problems. After the wall came down, a lot of people were aware what happened in communism and how bad it was. But then year after year, people forgot about it. And of course, I lived at this time. I was here in Berlin when the wall came down. But the younger people now who are in the 30s, they have no personal experience in this. So the only thing to know about this would be with their teachers at school. But the teachers, they don't tell them about this. They tell them about the evils of capitalism, but they don't tell them about what socialism meant, what communism meant. And when we speak about China, let's give me one example. In China, from 1958 to 1961, happened the biggest socialist experiment in history of mankind. Mao Zedong called it the Great Leap Forward. What happened there? 45 million people died in China, 45 million people in only 4 years. So, and when I have lectures about these topics all over the world. Last year, I've been in 17 countries, this year in 13 countries. And whether I speak in Asia, in Latin America, in the United States, or in Europe, I ask my audience, have you heard at school from your teachers about this great leap forward in China, where 45 million people died? And wherever I speak, and whether it's to 20 people, 200 or 2,000, only very few people raise their hand. They haven't heard about this. And this is the disaster. And this is the reason why I'm writing my books, because young people, of course, they should learn it at school, students, but they don't learn it.
Okay, it's break time. To all our great listeners here at home and around the globe, we'd like you to click subscribe on networkradio.us. That's networkradio.us. And this way you get the latest email when the new show is up. You can go to 2mics.us for Apple. Click on the Apple there. That is commercial free. So you can go to networkradio.us or 2mics.us, where you click the Apple. Again, no commercials, right? Now, for Rumble, we have a great advice coming from one of our listeners, Lisa, who said, I keep hearing this about, the numbers on Rumble? Well, we think we have a solution with the algorithm. So what you have to do when you get to Rumble, there's like a thumbs up and a thumbs down. She said it looks like a boxing glove, but just click the thumbs up, and that's like a like button. Okay, so then they have algorithms. It's at the top of the video. You'll see it on the left side, right? And if you're looking for our show on Rumble, just if you want to search our show, just go there, and by clicking channels, you enter Two Mics, and you'll see Mike and I's face, okay, in the search bar, and you click follow. There's so many Two Mike shows, but ours is Two Mics, Colonel Mike and Dr. Mike. So we hope this helps you, but don't forget, just subscribe, and that gives us an idea how many of you, and also always go to the website twomics.us, and that's where you email us and give us the comments, and we appreciate that. That's Lisa from New Mexico. We want to thank you.
Yeah, well, we have exactly the same problem, sir. Even when I worked for the CIA for about almost a quarter century, and when you talk to even senior policymakers at that time, they knew nothing about history, since after Vietnam, really. And I think these days in our schools here, especially in the public schools, there's very little history of America taught, or history of the world, unless it can be pictured as supportive of the progressive ideas that seem now to be plaguing both of our countries.
I want to recommend something to you. Maybe you can send me another email after our interview. I have 2 films, and I will send you the links. The one film is Life Behind the Berlin Wall. Everyone can Google it. You can find it for free on the internet, on YouTube. Life Behind the Berlin Wall. This is a film produced by me to explain people the difference between Eastern Socialist Germany and capitalist West Germany. I think it's very interesting to compare it, because the same country, the same people, the same history, the same language, only 2 different economic systems. And now I want to ask you a question. What would you guess? How long did you have to wait to get a car in East Germany, in socialist East Germany, in the 80s? What do you guess?
Mike, you go first.
5 years.
Oh, no. More than that. Maybe 12 or 15.
You're right. It was exactly between 12 and a half and 17 years that you had to wait for a car. And in the end, you got the worst car in the world, the so-called or another fact, only 16% in 1989 had a telephone in East Germany. In West Germany, it was 99%. And even 27% in East Germany had not their own toilet, not their own bathroom. They had to share it with other people in their multi-family house. So these are facts that people don't know. And so you can see this in this film. And then
we will definitely put that up there. We will definitely do it. And that's a word to the young people listening to this broadcast, or the families of the young people. If you think socialism is great, wait till you get it. What was Margaret Thatcher's famous saying? Socialism is good for everybody until you run out of money.
Yes, exactly. And maybe I can recommend you, beside my book, another film that is for free. It just finished, Poland from Socialism to Prosperity. I tell the story. Poland was one of the poorest countries in Europe, even in the 80s. One of the poorest countries, poorer than Ukraine, for example, poorer than Czech Republic, very, very poor country. And then they started in the 90s with free market reforms, with capitalism. And the result is now, since 3 decades, Poland is Europe's growth champion. Standard of living increased. It's amazing what happened there in Poland. And these are 2 films made for young people, short films. The one has 20 minutes, the other 30 minutes, to inform about the socialism, what teachers should tell them at school. And in my book, In Defense of Capitalism, I have a whole chapter, and I tell some other stories. And maybe I can add only one thing, because you mentioned Vietnam, the Vietnam War. I was in Vietnam. I was invited there, and they call themselves socialists with a ruling Communist Party. But in fact, it's easier to find a Marxist at a university in Europe or the United States than in Vietnam. They know what it is. They call themselves socialists, but they are not. It's a very entrepreneurial spirit. First the war destroyed a lot, and then they had this crazy planned economy. This planned economy destroyed what was not destroyed by the war. But people in Vietnam were very smart, and in the end of the 80s, they started with economic free market reforms. They called it Doi Moi reforms, and in 1990, even Vietnam was the poorest country in the world, poorer than all African countries. And today it's amazing if you go there. And they understood that entrepreneurship is so important. They invited me to give a lecture, a workshop at their university. The topic was, how can we improve the image of rich people in Vietnam? I was never invited to such a workshop in the United States or in Europe.
Imagine that. Now, this is the vision of Vietnam, or what the people believe in America about Vietnam, is totally opposite of what's really happening. I know what's happening, Rainer, because I know some Vietnamese students that were in America here in university, and their parents were very wealthy, and they're very entrepreneurial, and they're into all kinds of. One company had like 7 companies under one umbrella, and that was only in 15 years. And they were doing over $1 billion.
And by the way, you should think maybe because of the war that there were some maybe hate or maybe stereotypes negative about the United States, but it's not. There are points in Vietnam. 80% of people in Vietnam, they love Americans. And we had another poll. I commissioned a poll in Vietnam, and I asked them, what is the best economic system in the world? And United States was number 2 for young people there, and the last was China and North Korea. So and I met a young female entrepreneur, and what she told me, she said, my parents told me, think like American, act like American, clothe like American, eat like American, hear the same music, then you will be successful. That's what she told me. And I admire these people because, of course, it would be, everyone would understand after the war when they had some, negative feelings and so, but they don't have. They look in the future.
Yeah. You're absolutely right. If you look at the Vietnamese in America, in society, within one generation, look how entrepreneurial they are. And some of their children and grandchildren have built their companies into hundreds of $1 million companies. And if anybody, they should be the ones that are angry or have hate or want reparations that they were brought here on a boat. But you know what, Rainer? They're the most thankful people that came to this country after the war, that they had the opportunity to come here.
Absolutely. And I spoke about this topic with a Vietnamese ambassador here in Germany. And so I admire this because I think it's always better for you. Don't make excuses about the past. This is what all these African countries do. Oh, yes. There was colonialism, and so we are victims, and so. And I hate this victim mentality. They hurt themselves in this way. And he laughed. And what he told me, here, Rainer, look, we in Vietnam, we were in war with half of the countries in the United States Security Council. So we were in war with China, we were in war with France, we were at war with Japan, we were at war with the United States. If we would like to hate all of this, we would have to hate everyone, but this doesn't make our country better.
He was absolutely correct in saying that. And look at the people who were born here, whether they're born here first, second, third, fifth, seventh generation, whatever, they're still crying about things that never even happened to them. And they're looking for reparations. And who's going to give it to them, and for what reason? It's crazy.
Yes. This is what I think one of the worst things today with the so-called woke ideology, what in reality is only a new label for leftist ideology, is this victim mentality. And I wrote another book. It's about successful disabled people. And I spoke with an American. His name is Eric Weinmeier. And he was the first to climb the Mount Everest, and he's blind. And he didn't only climb the Mount Everest, but he climbed the 7 summits, the 7 highest mountains in 7 continents. And he's blind. And he didn't feel as a victim or so. He was blind. He could have a lot of excuses why not to be successful. And this is the American spirit for me. This is what made Americans so successful. The combination of two things. First, a good economic system, the best economic system, capitalism. And the second thing is that you feel as the master of your own life, not as a victim. These are the things that made America successful. And if you have problems now in America, and I know there are a lot of problems, it's very easy to solve it. Go back to both of these principles. First, capitalism, and the next thing, see yourself as the master of your own life and not as a victim.
That's very well said, sir. We are in dire need of that. But we're a long way from it at the moment. Maybe the next election will do something if it's not fixed.
I have a question for Rainer. Hey, Rainer, what kind of cars were being at the time? What kind of cars were being imported into East Germany for sale? What were they? Skoders, Seats? What were they?
No, they called it Trabi, and it was, it was like, I think, 25 horsepowers. it was very bad for the environment. It was not only very slow, it was only very bad for the environment. And as mentioned, you had to wait between 12 and a half and 17 years for a car. Of course, you could buy a used one, but even if you bought a used one, 20-year-old car, you had to pay a higher price than for a new one. And this is because, a planned economy does not work. And this is what people don't understand. And the problem now today is, I wrote this article about Reaganomics against Bidenomics. And Bidenomics is, for me, only another word for a planned economy. Because
yes, it is. Yes, it is.
This is what people don't understand. Let me come to this point. The real difference between a free market economy on the one hand and a planned economy on the other hand is very easy. In a free market economy, entrepreneurs decide what to produce. In the end, it's consumers' choice. We as consumers decide everything, who's successful and who's not. In a planned economy, politicians and government officials decide what is produced. And this is what happens now in Europe. This is what happens now in the United States. For example, they forbid combustion engines for a car, and they want to forbid a lot of other things. They want to tell you how you have to warm or to heat your houses and all this. And this means politicians want to decide what is produced or what you should buy and what not. And so they don't call it a planned economy because it has a bad, meaning for a lot of people, but in reality, it's only what their names like Green New Deal and all this. These are only new marketing for a very old idea that failed time and again.
Yeah, they can't use the word planned economy. Now, by the way, when those crappy cars were being imported from wherever, Russia or whatever, in the meantime, at the time, Western Germany was making some of the best of the Mercedes-Benz product, some of the best of the BMW product, and the Audi product, because the older ones are much, much better. Maybe these new ones are technology advanced, but the old ones are just tremendous, right?
Absolutely. And the difference is, if you wanted to buy a Mercedes or BMW or Audi, you could go to any car seller and take it away in the same afternoon. And you could choose between. Also, if you would like to buy a car from the United States or from Japan, of course, you could buy everything and you could take it away the same evening. And in East Germany, you had to wait this 12 to 17 years. And this is, it's time and again, there were 24 experiments with a planned economy in the last century, 24 experiments. And they tried it in so many different ways. In China in another way than in the Soviet Union, in North Korea in another way than in Cuba, in Venezuela in another way than in East Germany or in Yugoslavia or Bulgaria, but they had all one in common. They failed without any exception. But the trick of the socialists is, after it failed every experiment, they thought, oh no, this wasn't real socialism. Next time it will work. The last time that it happened, I remember, was in Venezuela. Venezuela was in 1970 one of the 20 richest countries in the world. One of the 20 richest countries. Then they started with regulation, more regulation, especially labor market regulation. and the situation became worse. And then they did something very crazy. In 1998, they voted for socialist Hugo Chavez. And he and the intellectuals in Europe and in the United States, they were so enthusiastic. They called it the socialism in the 21st century, because of course, North Korea wouldn't be such a great example to inspire people. So, but Venezuela, they sound like a little bit Cuba and South America. So what happened? The first years were not so bad because oil prices increased a lot, but then he started with all these crazy things, nationalization and so on. The result was in Venezuela, inflation rate was 1 million%, 1 million%. 10% of the population fled. The rest of the population lives there in hunger and poverty. And of course, they abolished democracy. They abolished freedom of press, freedom of speech, things that happen always in socialism. And now, if you ask the same socialists about their socialism in 21st century, they no, this is not an example, but this wasn't real socialism. And this is what they tell us in 100 years, time and again. And so in my book, I tell you something more about my book. I have 10 chapters about all the stereotypes against capitalism. For example, capitalism is to blame for hunger and poverty. Absolutely crazy. Fact is that 200 years ago, before capitalism, 90% of the worldwide population lived in extreme poverty. 90%. Today, it's less than 9%. And even in 1981, it was 43%. So this was happened due to capitalism. And so I have a lot of chapters, and I didn't write the book to convince anti-capitalists, because I think I know they will not read the book, they will not buy the book. They prefer to buy the new book from Bernie Sanders. I read this new book, absolutely crazy book. The title is Why It Is Okay to Be Angry About Capitalism. This is Bernie Sanders' book. No, they will not read my book. I wrote the book for people like you and people who listen to us, to support you with all the evidence, all the facts.
Well, thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.
It's without any theory. And, you know, for this book, I used 360 scientific books and scientific papers. You find there 900 footnotes, but don't be afraid. It's written straightforward. It's easy to understand. If you can understand what I say now, even in spite of my German accent, in spite of my strong German accent, it's much easier for you to understand the book.
No, it's okay. Don't worry. Your accent's great. I call it the Hashkin Bashkin. But I'll tell you something about Bernie Sanders. Bernie Sanders is probably an extreme capitalist, or as you would say, what did they call him in the Russian times? Not oligarch. There was something else. The commissars, whatever. Bernie Sanders always talks socialism and Marxism, but he has 3 homes. You know, he does very well. He's grifted off the public teat for his whole life. He's never really had a job except for he wrote for some rag piece, and I think it was even pornography. I'm not sure. But, you know, thank you very much for writing this. And we're happy that you came on to tell us about this so we could tell our listeners and listeners around the globe. By the way, Rainer, we have listeners all around the globe. So no matter where you are listening to this podcast with 2 mics, you could buy this book, In Defense of Capitalism. We'll have all the footnotes up, and we're really thankful for you to come on. Go ahead, Mike. Go ahead.
Yes, and please let me add something. It's published in 30 languages. So you can get it in your language, adapted to your country. And I'm very happy that you invite me. Please send me again an email that I can send you the links to both of these films.
We want to keep in touch with you because people like you have to be out there, and we have to get the message out there, because there's so many kids that are not educated today. When I say kids, I'm talking up to 35 years old. They don't know anything. Now, let me tell you the good part about when Reagan was in. I traveled to 8 or 9 countries in Europe at the time, and the dollar was so damn strong. Everywhere I went, I got double for the money.
Yeah. I remember this. I had a lot of friends from the army at this time, from the American army. I was young. I was a student, and they had so much money they could drink so much beer, maybe too much sometimes, because I got for 1 Deutschmark, I remember I got I got for $1, I got 5 Deutschmarks at this time. It was really great. Now, I admire Ronald Reagan. I think in the United States and for the whole world, we need a new Ronald Reagan.
Yes, sir. And by the way, one of my favorite places where I was supposed to stay 2 days and I wound up there 14 days was Heidelberg. What a place, Heidelberg, Germany.
Yes, I lived near there. I lived in Darmstadt. It's only maybe 40 minutes from Heidelberg. Yes, and I had a lot of American friends at this time. You know, I always loved America because this spirit of capitalism. But today, so many things change. I've been a lot of times in the United States this year, last year, in a lot of different. I've been in Boston. I've been in New York. I've been in Washington and in Memphis and in Las Vegas. But for example, if you fly today, it's a nightmare. It's terrible. Yes. You miss all your flights. And even I met Steve Forbes there, and even his flight was also canceled. It doesn't help if you are rich or famous. Yes,
Rainer, when you come into our airports, you're greeted by the customs department. It was formerly the SS Gestapo, but now you're greeted by the TSA, which is just a nightmare going in and out. And yet they have an open border right down here in Texas and Arizona. But for the people coming in and out, you have to go through all this malarkey. You know, it's really great that you came on. You know, again, I'm going to say something. One thing about Heidelberg, when I was there, I found one of the best Italian restaurants I've ever eaten at, which was run by Italians in Heidelberg. Beautiful city, you know, and 16, I don't know, Mike, I think it was 16 or 32 beers in one place, one pub. You could get 16 or 32 selections of beers. I couldn't believe it.
Yes, this is a free market economy. You are free to choose. And, you know, socialists tell you, why do you have so many products? What is enough? So this is what they will tell you. But I think competition is the best. People have to find out what is the best beer, what is the best car. And in socialism, government want to tell you what is the best car, what is the best beer. And so this is the difference.
Yeah, and in Western Germany, you could get anything from a 4-cylinder to a 12-cylinder. Hey, Rainer, thank you for coming on. It was really a pleasure. We'll have you on again sooner or later, but definitely we'll keep in touch, and I'll email you right after this, okay?
Yes, it was a pleasure to me. Please send it to me. I will post it. I have 160,000 fans. I will post it for them because I think it was a good interview. Thank you for your questions. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Have a great day.
God bless.
Thank you.